Mia Seppo, the outgoing UN resident coordinator, has spent the last 4 years in Bangladesh. She worked through two major events, the Rohingya crisis and the coronavirus pandemic. Before she's leaving, she sat down with the people from Daily Star to talk to us about her last 4 years in Bangladesh.
Thanks. As you know, Bangladesh did very well on the Millennium Development Goals. The Sustainable Development Goal agenda is more ambitious and in that sense more challenging. The achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals globally is now at risk because of the pandemic and the impact of the pandemic across all the SDGs. So for us in Bangladesh, we have just finished our cooperation framework for 2022 to 26. This is our response as a UN system to the national priorities in the 8th five-year plan. And it is about the SDGs. So the SDGs is the roadmap and the cooperation framework is our action plan. We are working on SDG data, making sure that the data gaps are addressed, making sure that data is of high quality and frequent. Data is important in order to know where do we have geographical regions or groups who are lagging behind national averages. The SDG agenda is all about leaving no one behind. We are also working on SDG financing, and this is because the SDGs is about much more than just the UN or official development assistance. It's about these complex partnerships between government, development partners, private sector, and really looking at working together in a multi-sectoral and in a very networked way. When you look at the next years, the decade of action that we still have on achieving the SDGs, a big challenge is obviously climate and the climate vulnerability of Bangladesh, follow up on COP26. And then you have the opportunities around the fact that Bangladesh will be graduating from the least developed country bracket, which is a fantastic achievement for a country which is only 50 years old. But with that also comes challenges, and making sure that that graduation will be smooth, making sure that that graduation will be sustainable is going to be key, and that then links with the overall COVID challenge of trying to get the world on a trajectory of an inclusive and cleaner and greener trajectory. I think I will really cherish field visits. I mean, you never do enough of them, unfortunately, but it really, the opportunities that I've had to travel around the country, it's geographically or in terms of size, it's a small country, but it's a very big country when you look at the size of the population and the fact that different parts of Bangladesh are actually very different. There is both in terms of nature, in terms of people, in terms of culture, and that has really been the most interesting part. Just getting a deeper understanding and appreciation of what Bangladesh is. It goes without saying that these 4 years have been quite dominated by the Rohingya refugee crisis. It's been the issue that has grabbed a lot of attention. It's been an issue that has required a lot of engagement. We have, during my time, formulated 4 one-year joint response plans to the crisis, our support to the government's response, and this has come about through an extensive dialogue with the government. We are now continuing for the dialogue on the joint response plan for 2022, which will also include the complementary support from the UN side to Bashanchar. I think when I leave, it's just that reflection of a crisis which is, if you look at it just from an analytical, political, strategic perspective, it's very interesting to analyze. If you look at it from a human angle, it's heartbreaking. That teenage boys in the camps, that teenage girl in the camps, what people have gone through and what their lives are. And I think for years to come, it will very much test our humanity as an international community, and the international community and the UN needs to continue to stand with Bangladesh until a solution on this crisis can be found in Myanmar. So that certainly is, you cannot work here 4 years, or the 4 years I've been here, without this crisis leaving a very deep mark and something that you carry with you. And then came, the biggest disruption that the world has seen in many, many years in terms of global pandemic. And at the end of the day, Bangladesh, I remember the early scenarios and early modeling, and it really was incredibly scary, right? And some of those numbers and that modeling happened in other parts of the world, but it didn't happen here. It also didn't happen in the Rohingya camps, and I think that's something that we should be very proud of and grateful for, the way the government came together, worked with the UN and development partners to ensure a response that was not just a health response, but which was also a multi-sectoral response. So the UN system, it was not just agencies working on health, but it was everybody coming in supporting from different angles. And I think it also showed just that muscle that Bangladesh have to mobilize at the community level, working with civil society, working with NGOs to strengthen the response at the community level and make sure that the health system can cope and deal with the more severe COVID cases. But then, now we are just, wrapping up the conversations around COP26, and that, of course, shows where we are. I mean, we are in a climate crisis. The pandemic is a sign of the climate crisis. It's a sign of the fact that human health, animal health, and planetary health are all very closely linked. And I think that message is very clear in Bangladesh. I think there are no climate skeptics in Bangladesh. 6 million climate migrants already, that number expected to double by 2050, 17% of the landmass possibly being lost if sea rise continues at these levels. So it's very, very concrete. And the health consequences of the climate emergency, not to talk about the impact on livelihoods that depend on agriculture or fishery. I mean, that's something we can project, but we don't quite know what it will really mean. So for me, I mean, I think Bangladesh, both in terms of the everyday impact on people's lives in the coastal region, in the Chittagong hill tracts, in the north, in a country that already was very vulnerable to disasters. Bangladesh voice at the global stage, from the Honorable Prime Minister at UNGA, from the Bangladesh delegation to COP26. I think I leave with a very concrete understanding of just what climate change means for parts of the world which has not been, big emitters, but that really, truly are at the front line of climate. And that obviously is a really rich lesson to have, and I think it also is going to serve as really driving me in all my future assignments to make sure that climate stays on top of the agenda, and in particular the groups that climate and disasters always hit the hardest, which is, women, girls, and vulnerable groups.